Recorded Books presents The Cause, The American Revolution and Its Discontents, 1773 to 1783, by Joseph J. Ellis. Narrated by Winton. Preface. Lest We Forget. From Abraham Lincoln, Lyceum Address, January 27, 1838. I do not mean to say that the scenes of the Revolution are now or ever will be entirely forgotten, but that, like everything else, they must fade upon the memory of the world and grow more and more dim by the lapse of time. From Herbert Butterfield, The Whig Interpretation of History, 1931. Real historical understanding is not achieved by the subordination of the past to the present, but rather by attempting to see life with the eyes of another century than our own. The pages that follow represent my attempt to tell the story of a highly compressed historical moment that subsequent generations called the American Revolution. No one called it that at the time. The British called it the American Rebellion, an accurate description of the 8-year war fought by former British colonists who sought to secede from the British Empire. These former colonists didn't regard themselves as Americans, but rather as New Englanders, Virginians, or Pennsylvanians. No such thing as an American national identity yet existed. The term they used to describe their war for independence was the cause, a conveniently ambiguous label that provided a verbal canopy under which a diverse variety of political and regional persuasions could coexist, then change shape or coloration when history threw choices at them, for which they were unprepared. Thus my title. Whether the cause was truly a revolution remains, over 200 years later, a controversial question. My former mentor, Edmund S. Morgan, liked to resolve the debate with a wink, defining a revolution as a sudden change in human affairs so traumatic that no one understood it, either at the time of its happening or thereafter. No less an authority than George Washington observed, at the end, that any historian who managed to write an accurate account of the war for independence would be accused of writing fiction. The earliest and most articulate advocates of the cause insisted that they were not proposing a revolution. Quite the contrary, it was the British government that was attempting to impose a revolutionary change in the structure of the British Empire, by insisting that Parliament was empowered to tax and legislate for the colonies, without their consent. They opposed that change because it violated their historic rights as Englishmen, hardly a revolutionary agenda. Moreover, when some of the most ardent champions of the cause embraced the radical implications of its meaning, the end of the property qualification to vote, the expansion of women's rights, a gradual emancipation program to end slavery, a chorus of voices led by John Adams insisted that such drastic changes must be deferred. We can and should argue about the wisdom of that deferral strategy. There will be those who embrace the conviction that justice delayed is justice denied. But they must contend with the inconvenient truth that any attempt to implement the full meaning of the cause would have undermined the unity necessary to win the war, and thereby rendered American independence impossible. In her On Revolution, Hannah Arendt has called attention to the irony of it all. The French Revolution is admired for attempting to implement its radical agenda all at once, and failing. The war for American independence is criticized for deferring its full promise and succeeding. Wherever one chooses to take a stand, there can be no question that we must come to terms with an unusual kind of political animal, the prudent revolutionary. In several senses, their prudence proved wise, in fact brilliant. But as we shall see, when it came to slavery, the outcome was tragic, and we are still living with the residue of that failure. Chronology, so they say, is the last refuge of the feeble-minded, but the only reliable refuge for the historian. The story told here fits into the decade from 1773 to 1783. Though the neatness of that fit obscures the messy origins that precede and outcomes that follow, which cannot be ignored. Keep in mind that the past is not history, but a much vaster region of the dead, gone,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?